Dad was born in the vicinity of Pisgah community in northeastern Mississippi. He was born on a farm. He was the first of 5 children. He had a sister and then he had 4 brothers, and they farmed. Because of that experience, when he grew up and graduated from high school, he knew that he did not want to be a farmer. He went to school, high school, especially in the Pisgah community, and that's where he met my mother. When he graduated from high school, he got his draft notice for the Korean War. And he was in conversation with my mother, and they were seeing each other and growing closer. He made the decision to go to Houston, where he had an aunt and uncle living, to see what sort of life he could make there. And he went over and worked as a longshoreman. And when he got his draft notice, he quickly connected with my mom, and they made the decision to go ahead and get married right away. And they were married in the preacher's house, and they got on a bus and rode all night to Houston. That was their honeymoon. He went to work for Southwestern Bell as a lineman, and he was on a crew that installed the poles and the lines from Houston to Galveston. So after they got settled in Houston, he received his notice to report for service. So they didn't know what would happen then, but he went to the draft office and they had everyone line up, and they said, if you are married, step forward. And he stepped forward and he was deferred. And a year later, he got called up again, and they knew that he was married, but they said, if you have a child, step forward. And he did, and he was deferred again because I had arrived by that time. And so he did not have to report for the Korean War. My parents had children in 1951, 1953, 1955, and then 1964. He began as a lineman, and 38 years later when he retired, he was a network engineer. He retired at the age of 58. And he had no hobbies. But Michael Harbor enlisted his help in going to visit some of the older people in our church community, and Dad spent time doing that. He worked at Gospel Services, the company that put out the visualized Bible studies, those slides, Jewel Miller. He did some gardening. He got more interested in growing vegetables in his backyard. When they were younger, they were a part of a group that built a church building called Oak Meadows Church of Christ on Allendale. He was a deacon there in finance. I remember us waiting many times after church while he finished counting the money, and then we would go by the bank and drop it in the night drop. And he was a deacon over missions for many, many years. Whenever missionaries came into town from New Zealand or Australia, Mexico, their entire families usually would come with them, and they would stay at Mom and Dad's. And he was an elder for 11 years here at Southeast until not too long after he had his heart attack. My grandparents lived still in northeastern Mississippi. They were probably 89 and 87, and they'd had a very wet spring and their garden was full of grass. They enlisted my mom and dad to come up and help them hoe out this garden. And it was humid, and it had rained and muddy, and they worked all day long, the 4 of them. My parents were getting ready to go home to Houston the next day, 700 miles. And in the evening, my dad began to feel indigestion. And so they had to go to the emergency room in Tupelo, Mississippi. And the doctors there explained to my dad that he had blockages and that they were going to do a quadruple bypass surgery on him. And he told them that they were not, because he was from Houston, Texas, where the Texas Medical Center was located. And so he left the hospital, and they enlisted the help of some of my brothers here in Houston, and they flew up there. They bought a plane ticket for Mom and Dad. My dad was 69 years old. And they told him his 4-way bypass would last probably 15 years. So he was 69, and it lasted until he passed away at 94, and he didn't pass away of cardiac problems. A couple of years ago, he saw his cardiologist. He was probably 92 at that time. And the cardiologist said, I see something on your EKG I don't like, and I want to send you to Memorial Hermann downtown, and I want to do some more tests on your heart. And he looked at the doctor and he said, if we go into my heart and start doing tests, something could happen and I might pass away, or it might make things worse than they are. And he said, I'm not going to have it. I don't want it. My goal is to live as long as I need to so I can take care of my wife. And that's what he did. We always went to church. We went Sunday twice. We went Wednesday nights. If there was a gospel meeting, we were there. That was our way. And this past Thanksgiving, our whole family had dinner together like you do at Thanksgiving. And at some point, my dad just burst out in a song and serenaded the table. That was so unlike him. But that was a cute thing that he did, and it surprised and delighted everyone in the family. But he would dance a little dance sometimes for Mom. I mean, this was somebody I didn't know. This was not who he was when I was growing up. And he would sing to her, and he would just serenade her. It was sweet to see that. I'm glad I got to see that, because they really did love one another. Dad was a very quiet man. Not easily rattled, but you could rattle him enough to where you understood he meant business and you better not do that again. He was quiet but funny in his own way. He was dependable and hardworking and well-mannered. And he was good-looking, wavy hair. He was straight arrow. He was well-respected. He just did what was right.